fight, 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 fight.
Hypocrisy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. Oh, I don't need these on yet. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. What is up, you guys? How are you doing? How are you doing today? Today, we will be watching the sentencing of Derek Chauvin. That is the agenda today. It should start at 1:30 p.m. the sentencing hearing. So the things chat log on my screen is out of focus. Oh yeah. Oh my. Let me fix that. I got a new monitor. And so which doesn't sound like it should matter, but it does. So give me a second here. Woo. There we go. Something like that. A little bit better. Is it fuzzy though? Yeah, I gotta get used to it. So yeah, I got a 43-inch 4K monitor now. And that is this new thing that I'm working on. So I was doing the interview, or I was on Eric Hunley's show right before this with Joe the lawyer and with Nate the lawyer. And we were on Eric Hunley's channel, which was great. I love doing shows over there. And I got, so I set up the show on my 1440p monitor, which is my old one, but I'm using it now as the sort of a second monitor. And because of that, when I moved the chat window after capturing it in OBS, I moved the chat window over to the 4K monitor. It apparently scaled it up. So good job. Evil Bunny, no, I got the Aorus, the Gigabyte Aorus 43-inch monitor. So, yeah. Yeah, the fuzzy background. Here. Let's see if I can do this without moving too much. Oh, there's figurines. Figurines and toys. Anyway. There's actually still books back there. Those they're in boxes though. But yeah, so we got my simulating the fingering. Oh my gosh. Yeah, imagine being Joe, lawyer Joe, and ending Eric's stream by saying you want to be fingered by Patreon. Very, very weird. Very, very weird. But, yeah, so the background is still in flux because I got little stray hairs there. That's nice. I still need to get someone to help me hang up my flag or whatever else I'm going to hang up in the background. And unfortunately, we've had an illness running through the house. So that's been on hold. But yeah, I've also got to get some more some acoustic paneling up because with the new setup, it's there's a lot of There's a lot of sound reflection going on. I think you guys probably don't hear it as much, but I definitely do here in the room, and it's distracting. But yeah, so back to the topic at hand. Instead of me sitting here blabbing about my setup, which you can see my current setup on locals, recadalaw.locals.com. I showed a behind the scenes setup, and it's all I'm waiting for is my new desk. Well, and all the mounting arms. Because I'll have monitors floating off in the ether, which would be great. But I need those mounting arms to come in. But and my new desk will top it off. But instead of talking about that, let's talk about Derek Chauvin. We have the sentencing hearing coming up. I have the stream from CBS News, which I think I'm going to look for a different stream while I've got a minute here, because I don't really want to use their stream. I want just a straight lace stream. I don't want commentary. I just want the trial hearing. This is a sentencing hearing. Washington Post, ABC News, CBS News. Who else? Come on. So wait a minute. I type in Chauvin sentencing hearing and mine doesn't show up. Racists? Man, so far, we'll see. Reuters. But so this is a sentencing hearing. So what's going to happen is we're going to hear oral argument from both parties. Derek Chauvin's attorney, Eric Nelson, will be making an oral argument for a downward departure from the sentencing guidelines. Sentencing guidelines have him at about 15 years. That's where they will have him. And so he will be arguing for a downward departure. The downward departure would result in basically probation. That's going to be a stretch. Let me just suggest that's going to be a big stretch on the possibilities here. So that would be the argument for Derek Chauvin would result in 12 months probation, no jail time. I guess there could be a longer probation, but that's sort of the idea when you have a downward departure. The state will be arguing for aggravating factors, and those aggravating factors will contribute to, it could be as much as a doubling or tripling of the recommended sentence. So we're looking at, it could be 30 to 45 years. My general prediction is 30 years. That's what I think is going to happen here. That's what I think this is going to end up being. And that is going to be a very, very messy thing for him. So what we have leading up to this, we do have findings of fact and a verdict from Peter Cahill, the judge, on 4 aggravating factors. The state moved to find 5 aggravating factors. Cahill found 4 of them. Any one of those aggravating factors is independently sufficient to increase the sentence within the judge's discretion. Since they found 4 of them, I think it's safe to infer a very large departure from the recommended sentence. That's why I'm going with 30 years. I do not believe we will be hearing the other motions at this hearing. The other motions from Eric Nelson, motions for mistrial, that type of stuff. They may be covered at this hearing. I don't know. To my knowledge, this is a sentencing hearing, and the post-judgment motions would be something that they may set up a separate hearing for. But if we do hear argument on post-judgment motions, that'll be a great thing to watch. That'll be very interesting. These are the theories that the case should have been moved and all of that stuff. And Eric Nelson's goal in post-judgment motions and argument over that, his goal will be to get appeal points into the record, because Peter Cahill has had every opportunity to find a mistrial in this case during the case. He had plenty of time and opportunity and ability to do that. He chose not to do it. There is no reason to believe that he's suddenly going to change his mind now that all of the things that he's been told, he's being told again. So Eric Nelson's job at that point is to set up the record for an appeal. It's very, very unlikely that that Judge Cahill would overturn his rulings so far and do a 180, especially when he found those 4 aggravating factors. I mean, that's an indication right there that he has no intention of changing sort of the quote unquote outcome. The one hair. Oh, sorry. I'll go get a whole bunch of hairspray and plaster it up to the rest of my hair. But anyway, so that's what's going on. That's what we're watching today. I have no idea how long this hearing is going to take. My wife actually asked me. She's like, "Oh, you're broadcasting during the day. Cool. How long is that going to be?" And I said, "I don't know, because it's it's a hearing. I would assume, a couple hours. This is going to be it's going to be something, and then we'll get the sentence. We'll get the sentence. So at the end of this, we should know what's going on." All right, let me get some of these early chats. What I'm going to try and do on this one, since we're probably going to have some people in here who aren't used to the channel and stuff like that, I'll try and address chats as they come in, especially before the hearing. Once the hearing gets going, I may not want to interrupt so much, but since we're going to be waiting on the hearing to start for another 18 minutes, we'll get these early ones out. So Not So Handsome Jack says, "Hey Nick, Nick, take my money because I passed out 10 effing minutes before the Vic stream." No, how'd you miss the whole thing? You missed the Vic stream? Oh my gosh. Well, the Vic stream is still up on my channel. It will remain up on the channel. I am not migrating it. I may upload it to the archive site anyway, but I am leaving it up on the channel for people to watch. It's been such a hallmark of the 2019 year of this channel. The theme of Vic's case was such a big part of 2019 that I figured it's one that should stay here, and people are interested in watching that who've been following the channel for a long time. So it's not going anywhere. And if you know people who are interested in watching it, just give them the link. It'll be active. Texas Red says Chauvin is going to get the worst sentence possible. Possible that he might do that. I don't think Judge Cahill's going to go all the way. I don't think so. But we'll see. We'll see. I think he's going to try to look even-handed and only double it. I don't think they're going to go easy on him at all. No, I think going fully, I mean, they have enough to probably triple the sentence. I don't think they're going to do that. Lamar 76 Metal says, "What a gift. Daytime stream by you rackets. Finally, look, get more high profile court cases. I love to cover them. These are so much fun. I love watching the hearings live on these high profile cases, seeing what these attorneys do, giving my very safe Monday morning quarterback on what I think they do wrong. But ultimately seeing them in, I mean, Eric Nelson has been in charge of Derek Chauvin's life for the past several months. I think that's an amazing thing. It shows an interesting obligation and responsibility and burden that attorneys share when they take on these types of cases. And so I love watching it. If you guys have And I would have loved to watch Ronnie O'Neal's live, but the timing didn't work out. And I don't know that it was being covered live the whole. Oh my God, look at this guy. I don't even know what. Look at. Who is this man? Who is this? I gotta change this screen layout here. Hold on. Ah! Where is it? Here we go. Look at this guy. That's a law professor. Imagine you go into your first class at law school. You're like, I'm going to go to law school. What the hell is happening with that guy? Wow. Very, very interesting. I don't want to hear their opinions. I don't have the audio on at all. So the guy popped up on my screen. I was like, the chat has to see this man. Oh my goodness. So okay. What happened? Oh my, yeah, the chat's all messed up over there. I better fix that while we're here. Just a second. This is a wonderful readjusting of OBS Live is so much fun. This is the top shelf legal content you all came for. Okay. Whew. Got that fixed now. Got that fixed. I'm glad we got it fixed up now, though, because I wouldn't have noticed. I would have been trying to do it during the trial. So thank you. Thank you, strange hair man with gray beard and gray radiating out from your eyeballs. You, sir, have saved me from trouble later on. But yeah, I love doing these daytime streams when there's something to follow. I will be following the Kim Potter lawsuit as much as that is televised. That's a taser lady. I definitely want to follow that. And any other stuff. I mean, if the officers who are charged with shooting Rashard Brooks, if that trial is publicized, I would love to watch it. If the McMichaels, the guys who are accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery, if that is televised and someone finds out any of these things, let me know. Evil Bunny, I am planning on doing daytime Twitch. In all honesty, that's a real thing that's coming. So, but until I get some other things locked down, I have to wait. The Denialist says, it's a slow day at work today, so thanks for doing this during the day. My pleasure. Johnny F. Face says, if PBS NewsHour shows it, usually no commentary. I'll take a look. Garrett Rolfe got his job back. Who's Garrett Rolfe? I don't know that name off the top of my head. Simple Phil says, Racket's been a fan since the LOL suit. I'm sending you a Rekieta Law themed Space Marine this weekend. Oh, cool. Thank you. In Kermit voices, for the Emperor. Ah! So there you go. Oh, Garrett Rolfe, the cop in Rashard Brooks' case. Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh, yeah, I saw that. So they kicked him out, but they didn't follow due process. So they had to hire him back. Yeah, 17F. Believe me, I'm aware. No, I know, but the nighttime show is also I have developed an audience at night, and I love that audience very much, even though they're a bunch of rancorous degenerates. And I enjoy doing the nighttime streams, and I don't want to change that because I know there's a lot of people who are really happy to have a show to watch at night that isn't garbage. I don't know why they watch my show, but they do. Hardcore Iron Noob says, so what happened to the appeals that Nelson filed? The appeals, the post judgment motions, if that's what you mean, they may be heard today. They may have a separate hearing. I'm not positive on that. Either way, he's not going to win on those here. There will be appeals filed to the Minnesota Court of Appeals. Those will be determined by a different court. Phoenix Orb says, if Furcada sees his shadow, do we get another 6 months of latent gay? Sorry to hear about the illness in your family. Hope they have a speedy recovery. Godspeed. Oh, yeah. It's just some sinus congestion stuff. And you know that goes. It messes with people's sleep, and it's made their days a little bit less pleasant. And so they've been taking it easy, watching TV, hanging out, and they're mostly recovered now, though. Niku Yasha says, is that Sideshow Bob? It's still there. Here we go. Look at this guy. He's into it, too. Goober Gabber says, the law professor who was seen on the streets earlier asking for change. Oh, come on. Ridgedale Brand says it's that Delta variant. If this is the Delta variant, then we should not be scared of anything, but I don't think it is. Absence of some of the key symptoms and factors. Phoenix Orm says, Bob Ross has let himself go after he tried the artisanal crank. The law professor, if you haven't caught on already, you boomer. No, I got it. This is Godspeed. Godspeed, back to you. Back to you. All right, let's see if we've got anyone else. Maybe PBS. Wait a minute. So PBS already has the live stream set up for George Floyd's family offer remarks following Chauvin sentencing. That's set up for 2:30. So they're thinking an hour-long hearing, which it very well could be. I've now got the PBS stream, which starts in 6 minutes. I don't think C-SPAN would stream it. C-SPAN isn't, they don't usually do court cases. So we've got PBS NewsHour goes live in 6 minutes for the thing. God, otherwise we just got this weird guy. Look at him. What a strange, strange man. Why does he have a typewriter on a stool? What is the purpose of this? Where is he broadcasting from? And why do they have a University of Southern California lawyer on law professor? There are Minnesota criminal law professors that they could go ahead and have on in Minnesota talking about Minnesota law. Why aren't they doing that? What a... These people. These people. Ugh. Like Nick. No, they would never have me on. They would never have me on. Judge Cahill is extremely biased. He even denied the Schwartz hearing. Well, you know what? The Schwartz is in you. Lone Star. Lone Star. The Schwartz is in you. I got the ring out of a Cracker Jack box. That was Judge Peter Cahill. That was him. That's why he denied the Schwartz hearing. He knew it was in. The Schwartz hearing was in Derek Chauvin the whole time. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I'd love to see your your predictions in chat, guys. How bad do you think Chauvin's gonna get railroaded? I want to full disclosure for anyone watching the stream. I know a lot of people think that Chauvin should be found not guilty and all sorts of stuff. I don't know that he should have been convicted for the murder charges. I think guilty on manslaughter is supported by the law. The question that I have in relation to Chauvin, the thing that I've always gone back to is, I think ultimately a competent jury and an impartial jury can find Chauvin guilty of at least manslaughter. I think they can do that. I think the evidence is sufficient, and depending on the arguments provided, that is a thing that can happen. My problem in this case is I think that he did not get a fair trial, and I don't know that he could get one in Minneapolis this quickly. I really don't. And in many other cases, we would see another year have gone by before Chauvin stood trial. And or a change of venue. And I do think either of those things would have been to the credit of the justice system. And even though it's entirely possible that an impartial jury separated by another year of time or several hundred miles of distance, maybe they hold the trial up in Duluth, maybe they hold it in St. Cloud, maybe they hold it in Mankato or Rochester, one of the other pseudo metro areas in Minnesota, even if they held it out here. I think it's entirely possible that a competent and impartial jury with those logistical separations could come to the same conclusion that this jury did. But I think people would have much more faith in that judgment than what we've got today. And I think that is one of the considerations that needed to be made, and I think it should have been done early on by Judge Peter Cahill. I do think he should have removed it from Minneapolis. I do not think it was the proper venue because of riots literally outside the courthouse and in the neighborhoods of the people who would be called on to be jurors in the case. That being said, we also have a juror who we know lied on his jury questionnaire, which is important, I think. If you're not familiar with that story, that is a juror, a juror who is an African-American who said that he, on the jury questionnaire, it asked if you had attended any police-related protests in Minnesota, and then a subsequent question if you any anti-police, I believe it was an anti-police protest in Minnesota, and then a subsequent question of, have you attended an anti-police protest anywhere in the United States? He answered no, and then it turned out through some internet sleuthery that he indeed attended a protest in, a march, the Martin Luther King anniversary march in Washington, D.C. And of course, if you're familiar with that march, you would know that George Floyd, two of his family members actually spoke out about police brutality at that march, and that he was wearing a shirt with a picture of George Floyd and a giant circle, and around the circle it said, "Don't kneel on our necks." Now, to me, that indicates a presupposition of bias. To me, I don't know, maybe I'm silly, but it kind of looks like when you're wearing that shirt and you're at that march, that there might be some bias in there. But I don't know. You guys have to make up your own minds on that one. I wouldn't want to plant that idea in anyone's head. That seems very, very, that's very risky thing to say or something. All right, I've got the Reuters raw feed pulled up, and so we'll just keep an eye out for Judge Cahill to pop into frame, and then we will be live on the hearing. We've got a couple other chats that have come in. Phoenix Orm says Don King has let himself go if he's now promoting court cases. Texas Red says he's going to get reamed harder than Preston Poulter. It's hard to imagine. Josie Buckner says, thank you, Nick, for entertaining me at work. Hey, my pleasure. Hopefully this will be entertaining or insightful or something. And then G-Man says that law professor is the alternate dimension version of Ronnie O'Neal 30 years later if he had won his defense. Oh, my gosh. Woo. Woo. That was good. That was good. I liked that. I like that joke. But yeah, we should see some arguments. Oh, there he is. I saw his forehead. I saw Cahill's forehead. Time to get ready.
Before the court, the state of Minnesota versus
holy criminy. Hold on. Just a second. I'll get this. I got the wrong audio in there.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Jerry Blackwell for the state of Minnesota.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Steve Swisher on behalf of the state of Minnesota.
Your Honor, Keith Ellison, Attorney General on behalf of the state of Minnesota.
And for the defense.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Eric Nelson and Amy Voss appearing on behalf of Mr. Chauvin.
Thank you. We are still, for all those attending, under somewhat modified COVID restrictions, so we are asking that everyone keep their masks on unless they are speaking. I'll ask for people who are speaking to come up to the lectern and use the microphones, and please to remove your mask so that we can hear you clearly, and also to maintain the distances that we have set out in the courtroom. With that, we'll proceed first with the state. Mr. Blackwell, you may proceed with victim input.
All right, so now we're going to get to hear from the victim.
Impact statements. We will start with the 7-year-old daughter of George Floyd, Gianna Floyd, who will present hers by video.
Evil Bunny says money for your streaming plus a bonus for daytime streaming and Bunny. Hey, thank you. Alex Ghost says, did you see the Floyd statue getting defaced? It reminded me of you.
What do you miss most about your daddy?
Well, I ask about him all the time. And that's kind of it.
Yeah. Well, when you ask about him, what are you asking about?
Well, I was asking, how did my dad get hurt?
Do you wish that he was still here with us?
Yeah, but he is.
Through his spirit?
Yes.
Yes. And when you see your daddy again one day, what do you want to do when you see him?
I want to play with him.
What kind of games do you want to play with him?
I want to play with him, have fun, go on a plane ride, and that's it.
Yeah.
We used to have dinner meals every single night before we went to bed. My daddy always used to help me brush my teeth.
Oh. Do you miss him helping brush your teeth?
Yes.
How do you hope that the world remembers him?
Well, they help him because those mean people did something to him.
Yeah. If you could say anything to your daddy right now, what would it be?
It would be, I miss you and I love you.
All right. Thank you, Gianna. I really appreciate you answering questions today.
All right. So for those of you out there who are talking about coaching and stuff, yes, this is a victim impact statement. They are coached. These are not subject to the rules of evidence. These are not subject to anything. These are just the victims have a right to make a statement. So does the defendant, by the way, and a relative or representative of the defendant gets to as well.
BRANDON
This is not fully part of the legal process, but it is a right of both parties to make statements.
May 25th, 2020, George Perry Floyd Jr. was murdered by Derek Chauvin in a malicious and insidious display of hate and abuse of power. Chauvin killed George. Not only did he kill George, but he also displayed a total lack of consideration for human life as he did so. You saw it, I saw it, and millions of people across this country and the globe witnessed the act of hate. A year and 1 month later, I stand there before you tasked with the duty of expressing how George's death has impacted me personally and the rest of our family. As I racked my brain and thought about what I could say today, I came to this conclusion. It is humanly impossible for me to stand here and convey or articulate the right words that would capture all that we are feeling and what we have felt over this period. So please bear with me as I attempt the impossible.
Eric the Red says statements from the victim. Did the defense perform a resurrection?
Cry, but the full extent of our pain and trauma will never be seen with the naked eye. The heartbreak and hurt goes far beyond any number of tears we could ever cry. Words simply cannot express the pain, anguish, and suffering that our family and friends have endured since George's murder. It has been truly unimaginable, but not as nearly unimaginable as the defendant's decision to take the life of a human being with no regard for the effect it may have on others. Although Chauvin will be sentenced today and spend time in prison, he will have the luxury of seeing his family again, talking to them, and he will likely get to spend time with them upon his release. These are all luxuries that my young cousin Gianna was robbed of when Chauvin made the active decision to kill her father. There will be no more birthday parties, no graduations, holiday gatherings, or other family celebrations. The laughter, hugs, guidance, advice, sense of security, and those opportunities to simply say I love you are forever gone. They say time heals all, and while I generally believe that saying, it's challenging to do so given these unfathomable set of circumstances. Before I conclude, I must highlight a few things. George's murder, this trial, and everything in between has been tragic and devastating. Our family is forever broken, and one thing we cannot get back is George Floyd. It is the request of my family that the maximum penalty for the crime for which the defendant was convicted be imposed. On behalf of my family, friends, community, and supporters, I wish to express my sincerest gratitude for allowing us opportunities of expression. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ace Brain 2003 says, is that the spirit of a Southern grandma trapped in a child's body? Oh, come on, man. Don't do that.
Just for the record, this wonderful lady standing here is a Hennepin County victim advocate.
Ms. Boswell is well known to the
Oh,
court.
thank God.
Thank you, Judge.
And so, Your Honor, we'll next hear from the brother of George Floyd, Mr. Terrence Floyd.
Please, yeah, why is she standing there, though? She could be a victim advocate. Why is she up at the stand?
Yeah, Mr. Floyd, if you could state your full name, spelling each of your names.
Yes. Terrence Floyd. That's Terrence, Floyd, Floyd.
Go ahead.
No, you got two mics. Just stay in the middle. Stay in the middle.
I'm here.
It's like ASMR.
Represent my brother. I'm from New York. On May 25th, 2020, my brother was murdered.
This would be hard,
knows
though. Like, to be honest,
Derek
this would be
Chauvin.
really, really tough.
The facts of this case were proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and 3 guilty verdicts have been rendered. This situation has really affected me and my family. Any family member that has went through this. We are part of a fraternity of families, and
I mean, I
it's
don't know
not
about
one
that.
of those, you know, fraternities that you enjoy. I just, over this last year and months, I actually talked to a few people, and I wanted to know from the man himself, why? What were you thinking? What was going through your head
I mean,
when you had your knee on my brother's neck?
I think they kind of went
when
over
you,
that.
When you knew that he posed no threat anymore, he was handcuffed. Why you didn't at least get up? Why you stayed there?
You take your time.
Man,
A
that
month
orange lady
before
touched me, I would slap
my
her.
brother was murdered. I was on the phone with him, and we had a long conversation. And as I looked at the video of my niece, the last conversation me and my brother had was he wanted to have play dates. He wanted to plan play dates with Gianna and my daughter. And we started setting it up. That can't happen.
In
And I
New
have
York?
My daughter's still young, but I still have to explain to her because this is history. This is a case everybody knows about. So she's gonna find out, and I'm gonna have to explain that to her. And I think
I'm confused
that's,
about that one.
to me, harder than even just standing here. That I have to talk to my daughter and tell her, you know, about her niece, about her uncle, about the situation. That's basically reliving it all over again, years down the line.
Maggie said, too bad his family didn't care about him this much when he was still a drug-addicted criminal.
For my family, sorry. On behalf of me and my family, we seek the maximum penalty. We don't want to see no more slaps on the wrist.
I
We've
mean,
been through that already.
15 years
And
isn't
this
a slap
in my
on the wrist.
community, in my culture, we've been through that already. Smacked on the wrist. No. Because if it was us, the roles was reversed, there wouldn't be no case. It would have been open and shut. We'd have been under the jail for murdering somebody. So we asked for that same penalty for Derek Chauvin. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I wonder what the average murder 2 sentence is in Minnesota.
Your Honor, the final victim impact statement for the state will come from George
With no criminal
Floyd's,
history.
brother, Phalonis Floyd.
Phalonis? You should be mad if your parents name you Phalonis,
And
I
sir, if you
think.
could begin by giving us your full name and spell each of your names, and I have permitted you to use your phone because you have notes on it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you may proceed when you're ready. Giving us your full name first.
Okay.
Phalonis Floyd, spelled Philonise. Last name Floyd, Floyd.
And you may proceed.
One year ago, May 25th, my brother George was murdered by Derek Chauvin and his co-defendants in broad daylight
Again,
with a
I
knee to his
I
neck
actually
for 9
do.
minutes and 29 seconds.
I do feel bad for these guys because they did. You know, at the end of the day, they still lose a family member. That sucks.
I was a trucker, and immediately my life changed forever. I began to speak to the world for George from the United Nations, Africa, Canada, Japan, and so many other countries. Every day, I have begged for justice to be served, reliving the execution of George, while others begged and pleaded for Officer Chauvin to simply just allow George to take a breath. I haven't had a real night's sleep because of the nightmares I constantly have hearing my brother beg and plead for his life over and over again. Even saying, "They're going to kill me. Please, officer." Screaming for our mom. I have had to sit through each day of Officer Derek Chauvin's trial and watch the video of George dying for hours over and over again. For an entire year, I had to relive George being tortured to death every hour of the day, only taking naps and not knowing what a good night's sleep is anymore.
I mean,
I've been
I don't
lifting
know
my
about that.
voice tirelessly every day so that George's death will not be in vain. Honorable Judge
Was he
Peter
dying for a
Cahill,
cause?
I thank you for allowing me to share this today. George's life mattered. So my family and I, most of all, my niece, Gianna. My niece, Gianna, she needs closure. I'm asking that you please find it suitable to give Officer Chauvin the maximum sentence possible, charge that he has been found guilty for. My family and I have been given a life sentence. We will never be able to get George back. Daddy's our daughter's first love. He would never be able to walk Gianna down the aisle at her wedding, attend those magical moments of her life like a daddy-daughter dance, sweet 16 party, seeing her out for prom graduations, and she would never be able to have any personal memories with her father. With a smirk on his face and children present, Officer Chauvin used excessive force and acted against his training. Chauvin had no regards for human life, George's life. I stand before you today asking you to please help us find closure by giving Chauvin the maximum sentence possible, making sure he does his time consecutively without the possibilities of parole, probation, or getting out early for good behavior. Thank you.
Consecutive sentencing isn't really in the guidelines. Rando No Logic says all these appeals to emotion sounds more like fallacious Floyd to me.
Mr. Frank.
I mean, to be fair, he's not making a logical argument here. These literally are appeals to emotion. That's what they're for.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Nikuyasha says, pretty sure Africa has enough guerrilla warfare on their hands
Here
to
today,
care
of
what
course, for
happens on the
sentencing.
U.S.
Gives us an opportunity to speak about other matters that I think are involved in sentencing and where we are in the criminal justice system in the processing of this case. As a member of an elected office representing the people of the state of Minnesota, as well as people of the local community, I want to say a couple of things. And first of all, I want to really thank some of the police officers in the Minneapolis Police Department who, under great pressure, great stress, and to some extent at peril to their occupations, what they've devoted their life to, stuck to their oath and their commitment as police officers.
The Japanese Yakuza says sup.
Speak openly and
Sup,
honestly about policing and the training that is given and received by police officers. Those officers didn't hide behind a blue wall. They came forward. They told this court and those jurors what they knew about training and responsibility. And I think they deserve recognition and credit for that. Would also like to thank members of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. You know, those agents get called in, great sacrifice to their personal lives. Whenever things happen, they go. They did that here, and under really extraordinary circumstances, completed a very professional and thorough investigation. You know, conducting interviews is hard enough, but conducting them in the atmosphere of the city following the murder of George Floyd.
What atmosphere are you talking about?
And they did so, I think, above and beyond the call of duty. And I want to thank them for doing that on behalf of the whole prosecution staff.
What atmosphere? Everything's fine. Minnesota has...
I want to thank the family.
No one's even heard of George Floyd.
The loved ones, the friends of George Floyd. They have been through so much more than families involved in murder cases. He's right. It is a
sentencing hearings again.
You don't want to be part of.
They don't have rules of evidence. This is actually specifically
because of the
outside of the rules of evidence,
and because of security, safety precautions that we've had to take. They have been through a lot. At a time when they try to grieve, like everybody does for the loss of someone, they are going through so much more. And I want to thank them, all of them, the family. The court saw a testimony from Philonise Floyd, Courtney Ross. These are people who are trying to deal with their loss, but they have to do it in a very public way and under very trying circumstances.
I mean, they don't really have to.
So I thank them. They have all been models of grace and understanding. And it's really remarkable, quite frankly. I'll, I think, come back to them again in a little bit. Your Honor, we have submitted a sentencing brief. I would incorporate that. I guess I would incorporate my comments today into that memo. But I do think there are things that I want to bring out today in my arguments.
Let's see if you give good oral.
For hundreds of years, the court had discretion in sentencing. It was the trial court's decision on what a sentence should be. The recognition that the trial court sat through the trial, watched the evidence, and saw how it affected people, informed the court's discretion.
You're gonna
the legislature
start here?
passed the guidelines in a legitimate attempt to try and even out sentences. They defined certain presumptive sentences, as we all know, for typical crimes. For each crime, the typical crime. But they did not remove discretion for sentencing judges. They recognized that nobody is better suited to decide whether this is the typical case represented by that guideline's presumptive sentence, or if there are reasons why this is worse than that. And it gave, and the guideline still gives this court discretion when there are aggravating factors to give a more serious sentence.
Some discretion.
Than what the guidelines presumption calls for. And as you know, we are asking you to do that today. As this court found, there are 4 aggravating factors that we have identified. They go beyond a list of just what those factors are. We have not just done our homework and found a list. The court made good findings, detailed findings about those factors.
They were okay.
And we think they justify
some problems with them.
A greatly increased sentence. This is not the typical second-degree unintentional murder. Supreme Court in our state
intended
has said
this
that
unintentional murder.
Very recently, even one aggravating factor is sufficient to go twice the top of the range. Here we have 4. The first one that the court found is an abusive position of trust and authority. And the court specifically found that when Mr. Chauvin was acting as a police officer, he had a position of trust and authority. That is certainly true. We trust police officers. We trust them when we need help. We call them for help. We trust that they're going to take care of the problems that
you can tell this guy's a prosecutor. Everybody else in the courtroom's like, we don't trust cops. Go ask the Chauvin family if they trust cops, or the Floyd family.
Great power.
You guys trust cops? How about before this? Do you trust them then?
Use force that individuals would be prosecuted for using.
John Doe says
give
mob
them
rule trial.
authority
I don't even like the
to,
officer, but this is not justified.
Arrest, to detain. And with great power, of course, comes great responsibility. So they're not sent out there by themselves to do this. They're given
They're all Spider-Man
substantial
now.
training. This court saw all of that through the trial, in general and in specific to Mr. Chauvin and the other 3 officers. They're given training on the use of force, the proportional use of force. The force used has to be warranted by the threat. They're given training on de-escalation because we recognize that police officers are called in when people are not having their best day, when people might be affected by mental illness, drug abuse, any number of issues. They're just having a bad day.
What was
and
that?
they're trained
Was that
for
second one?
And should be. And they're taught how to use that to de-escalate and control a situation. They're taught medical intervention. They're taught to provide medical attention to people who need it. Being a police officer is a difficult job. We ask a lot of them. It's a profession, there's no doubt about it. But we give them a substantial amount of training, and most officers do it right. This case wasn't about police officers, all police officers. It wasn't about policing. This case was about Derek Chauvin disregarding all that training he received. And
some would say he
Mr.
followed
Floyd
his
until he
training.
suffocated to death.
Some of those people testified.
One of the things that you heard, Your Honor, and the jurors heard, that can really encapsulate, I think, a very important issue here. 7 words: in your custody is in your care. And it's a real simple mantra. It's a real easy thing to remember. You're going to take custody of somebody, you have to provide care. You have to do it in a caring way. You can't simply disregard their care. Mr. Chauvin abused his position of trust and authority as a police officer by doing just that, just disregarding all his training. It was an abuse of that because what did he decide to do? We often are forced in this criminal justice system to infer people's state of mind by their conduct and their statements. What was Derek Chauvin's end game here? What was the plan? It seems apparent the plan was hold him down until we can dump him in an ambulance and no longer have him be our problem. You recall he said to Charles McMillan, he's a big guy, might be on something. That's it.
He was a big guy who was on
held
something.
Mr. Floyd down.
I mean, he got that
Mr.
part
Floyd
right.
begged for his life.
Again, I'm not like the biggest Chauvin fan here, but he was a big guy who was on something.
And rather than doing the simple expedient of putting him on his side, he said, yeah, He was dismissive to that duty of care. We trust that arrestees will be treated with respect, reasonable force, and that their medical needs will be addressed. I'm paraphrasing from the court's findings. That trust was violated. We trust that they will use their authority reasonably, and this was a particularly egregious abuse of that force. Again, paraphrasing the court's findings. The typical second-degree murder does not involve that extent of abuse of a dearly held position of abuse or a position of authority and trust by the community and by individuals of the community. Your Honor found that Mr. Floyd was treated by Mr. Chauvin with particular cruelty. I think tortured is the right word.
I mean,
we know that.
How do you unintentionally torture someone?
We've all seen it. Mr. Floyd did not want to be in the back seat.
Well, if he didn't want to be there, I guess that's
it. I mean, that's the rub. It was the need to get him in that back seat no matter what.
Yes, that's how you arrest
We all
someone.
saw that once he was pulled out of that back seat, he calmed right down. He even willingly went down to the ground. I'm going down, he said. And he went down to the ground, not fighting, not punching.
He
And
was
placed
literally
initially
handcuffed.
on his side. He's already handcuffed. He's placed on his side in the recovery position, like he should be, because he's trying to breathe. And then quickly placed prone on the ground, face down. Mr. Chauvin put his left knee on George Floyd's neck, his right knee on George Floyd's back, face down on the pavement. Had Officer King sit on Mr. Floyd's waist area, and had Officer Lane hold his feet down. You can even see Mr. Floyd trying to pull his feet up. We all are going to fight to breathe. Everybody knows that fear when you all of a sudden realize you're having trouble breathing. It's just innate, right? We want to survive. We know we have to breathe. And there's an automatic reaction when you begin to feel like that is threatened. And you can see Mr. Floyd going through that. He tries to pull his feet up. But he's held down by these three officers while Officer Tao is looking on. He later, of course, goes to keep the people who want to help away. He's placed face down in this pavement so harshly that it rubs the skin off his face. He has injuries to his face from being face down on that pavement. He has injuries to his knuckles from just trying to lift himself up.
How did he have injuries to his
And
knuckles?
he's telling Officer Chauvin, I can't breathe. I'm dying. And Mr. Chauvin's response was, And all this time, I mean, imagine what Mr. Floyd is going through. If you're going to talk about particular cruelty and torture, really try to appreciate what he's going through. He knows he's suffocating. We all know that feeling of not being able to breathe enough. And he's begging, he's pleading, and he's being ignored. His concerns are being dismissed by somebody who has taken custody but not care. He was kept in that prone position for 9.5 minutes and was suffocated. There's no other way to say it. That's particularly cruel. That is more cruel than the typical second-degree unintentional murder. Significantly more. This is not a momentary gunshot, punch to the face.
Just a momentary gunshot.
This is 9.5 minutes of cruelty to a man.
You don't die immediately from a gunshot
and
either.
Just begging for his life. This court found that there were children present, standing only a few feet from these officers. These children, who were ages 17 and one child age 9. Why is that an aggravating factor? Well, I think everybody can figure that out.
No.
It's particularly bad to commit a crime in front of children.
He didn't do it in front of the children on purpose.
Academia about the development of the young brain and how long
they were incidentally there. That's nonsense.
Teenage girls, a 9-year-old girl. How are they going to process this? Standing feet from a man being suffocated by police officers. Such a stark sight that one of the children even says, we got to call the police on the police. How do you process that?
By calling the police on the police. The presence of children was for people who would use children to harm the other person.
The children were not only present watching a man die. We've all seen, if you haven't, you really need to. Look at George Floyd's face. As he's dying, he's suffering. The children have to watch this. But not only that, it's police officers, and there are people around them wanting to help. And at one point, and sure, they got upset. And at one point, Mr. Chauvin points his mace, grabs his mace to keep him back. How does a child look at that? There's another officer screaming at them to get back. The typical second-degree unintentional murder doesn't involve children standing feet away watching a 9.5-minute suffocation of a man begging for his life. This court also made a finding that the defendant committed the offense with the involvement of 3 or more other persons. Lane and King were involved directly in the restraint, and that Tao kept the bystanders at bay. I've already talked a little bit about Lane and King's role in holding Mr. Floyd down.
They disagreed with Chauvin.
They recognized that he was pulseless, that Mr. Floyd was pulseless at one point, and yet really made no effort to take care of the person in their custody.
I mean, they suggested that he should be rolled on his side, that he should not.
Most of the suffocation, and then only went over to keep people from giving help. One person who is identified as a medical trained firefighter for the city of Minneapolis, and that was dismissed. Like, are we going to believe her?
They have no idea who she is.
So they kept trained medical people from providing help.
She wasn't in uniform. She didn't show up in an
officers.
ambulance, you weirdo. She was just walking around. Any random dork on the street can't say, "Oh, I'm an EMT for the fire department."
Asked the court for probation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time arguing that. It's so outside of the realm of, I think, real possibility. This is a murder. I understand some of the arguments made on behalf of Mr. Chauvin. I understand, well, no, I can't understand what his family members and friends are going through. I can't. But it's certainly not enough for a departure to probation for a second-degree murder. We believe, Your Honor, that these 4 aggravating factors and the findings that the court has made certainly justify an upward departure. Because there are 4 of them, not standing alone, but in a sense, not overlapping, but coming together to show this is not the typical second-degree murder. This is egregious. And this justifies a double upward departure. From the top of the box, which is 180 months, we're asking the court to do a double departure, recognizing all 4 factors, to 360 months. As I mentioned before, Your Honor, this is sentencing. This is the time for victims, right? This is the time for the loved ones of the victim and the community to have a say. Again, I commend this family. I commend all of the loved ones, the friends, the people that have been involved in this case for tolerating and being gracious. None of this, of course, can bring George Floyd back. That's very true.
Great question from the chat. I'll address in a minute.
Criminal justice system to say, we hear you. This is the time for their criminal justice system to say, we recognize that this harm you're going through is real, and while we can't feel what you're feeling, we know we can do what your criminal justice system should do and recognize the severity of this crime and reflect that in the sentence to be given. It's time for this criminal justice system to say, we recognize this is more serious than the typical second-degree unintentional murder. The 4 reasons the court found reflect that and give this court more than an adequate basis to do that. Your Honor, we ask the court to impose a sentence of 360 months, commitment to the Commissioner of Corrections. As you know, Your Honor, there are no fines in murder cases. And we would ask the court just to reserve the issue of restitution. So we can clarify that with the family and present that to the court for 30 days. Thank you, Your
Honor. Someone asked, how does this affect future sentencing hearings?
No, Your Honor.
This is a typical sentencing hearing. There is nothing going on here that is anything even weird.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, just
This is a normal sentencing hearing. These happen every single day in every single state, and prosecutors make the same arguments every single day.
At this time, the defendant's mother, Carolyn Palenti, would like to address the court.
If you could state your full name, spelling each of your names, and proceed when you're ready.
Carolyn, Carolyn, Palenty, Pawlenty. I am the mother of Derek Chauvin. I am here to speak on behalf of my entire family. On November 25th, 2020, not only did Derek's life change forever, but so did mine and my family's. Derek devoted 19 years of his life to the Minneapolis Police Department. It has been difficult for me to hear and read what the media, public, and prosecution team believe Derek to be an aggressive, heartless, and uncaring person. I can tell you that is far from the truth. My son's identity has also been reduced to that as a racist. I want this court to know that none of these things are true and that my son is a good man. Derek always dedicated his life and time to the police department. Even on his days off, he would call in to see if they needed help. Derek is a quiet, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless man. He has a big heart, and he always has put others before his own. The public will never know the loving and caring man he is, but his family does. Even though I have not spoken publicly, I have always supported him 100% and always will. Derek has played over and over in his head the events of that day. I've seen the toll it has taken on him. I believe a lengthy sentence will not serve Derek well. When you sentence my son, you will also be sentencing me. I will not be able to see Derek, talk to him on the phone, or give him our special hug.
I mean, you could still
Plus
see him.
the fact that when he is released, his father and I most likely will not be here. Derek, my happiest moment is when I gave birth to you. And my second is when I was honored to pin your police badge on you. I remember you whispering to me, "Don't stick me with it." Derek, I want you to know I have always believed in your innocence, and I will never waver from that. I have read numerous letters from people around the world that also believe in your innocence. No matter where you go, where you are, I will always be there to visit you. I promise you I will stay strong, as we talked about, and I want you to do the same for me. I will do what you told me to do, take care of myself, so I will be here for you when you come home. Remember, there is no stronger bond or love than a mother's love. And one final thought I want you to remember.
Well, a pimp's love is also.
Remember, you are my favorite son. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Nelson.
I'm sorry. You gotta break tension with a joke. You got to. That was sad. You can't have sadness.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. It is my intent that my remarks this afternoon be quite brief. I do not intend to relitigate the facts of this case, nor spend any substantial time looking at the law. The court is very familiar with the facts of this case, and the parties have fully briefed the court relevant to the sentencing factors. And we recognize that in any case, any sentencing that comes before the court is tasked with a difficult job. The court must craft a sentence that serves the interests of justice, a rather nebulous term. The court must take into consideration the victim impact, public interest, as well as the circumstances and the history of the defendant. And in this case, more than any other, that likely any of us have ever been involved in, that task is exceedingly more difficult. In my remarks today, I just wish to briefly address each of those three considerations, starting with the public impact. As I believe we are all cognizant of, this case is at the epicenter of a cultural and political divide. We tried to keep a lot of that out of the courtroom during the trial and make this case about the facts. But we recognize what has happened as a result of this case. There are a great number of people who will view any sentence you pronounce as overly lenient and insufficient to satisfy justice. But there are an equal number of people who will view any sentence you pronounce as draconian or overbearing. Either way, some percentage of the public will view your sentence as a miscarriage of justice. The intensity of the public interest in this case cannot be understated. I trust that the volume of correspondence that each of us has received from the public at large is indicative of these very sentiments on both sides. As I was informed just yesterday, the Attorney General's office established a website, web submission, to accept community impact statements. Again, in my understanding is in a little over 2 weeks they received over 1,000 submissions. Again, on both sides.
Kind of surprised.
By my very best estimate, since my representation of Mr. Chauvin began last summer, I would estimate that I have received over 5,000 emails, over 1,000 voicemails, and hundreds of handwritten letters. Again, from both sides. And I expect that Your Honor has likewise been inundated with public comment and scrutiny. The impact that this case has had on this community is profound. It goes far beyond what happened on May 25th of last year. It has been at the forefront of our national consciousness, and it has weaved its way into nearly every facet of our lives, from the entertainment that we consume to the presidential politics, from protests to conspiracy theories. In the end, it is my sincere hope that when this proverbial dust settles, the community impact brings forth principled debate and civil public discourse,
Very civil.
Ultimately leaves a positive effect on the city of Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, and the United States. But nevertheless, while this court may consider the community impact, it is for these very same reasons that the court must turn to the foundational legal principles And remember that justice is blind. Law is built on reason and common sense, and it cannot be permitted to be assailed by public opinion. Turning to the second consideration, which is the victim impact, the death of George Floyd.
Guys, this is not his place to argue for a mistrial.
Was tragic.
This is about sentencing. It's completely different arguments, if you're curious.
Members. He is loved by his friends, and his death is justifiably mourned by those whose lives he impacted. He is a son, a brother, a father, an uncle, and a friend to many. And as the court heard today, the impact and the loss of his life, simply just, it can't be simplified. And it will take time. Finally, Your Honor, the court must take into consideration, just like it has to take into consideration the aggravating factors, it needs to take into consideration the mitigating factors. And the mitigating factors as set forth by the sentencing guidelines really point to the TROG analysis, essentially, ultimately in this case. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, again, arguing for a probationary sentence. That's briefed. But that being said, when we look at the TROG factors, who is Derek Chauvin? Derek Chauvin spent 19 years as a Minneapolis police officer. He loved being a police officer. I was contacted during the course of my representation and have had numerous conversations with his fellow police officers or fellow police officers that worked with Derek, some retired, some still active. And they told me that he was a solid police officer, that he did his job, that if somebody asked him to do a particular task, he never complained, he did it. One person told me that one of his sergeants told me that if I had asked him to dig a ditch for 8 hours, he would have picked up a shovel and he would have never complained for a second. He would have done his job. He was decorated as a police officer. Multiple life-saving awards. He was decorated for valor. He was proud to be a police officer because what he liked to do was help people. And as the statistics show, the vast majority of police work is helping people. He was proud to be a Minneapolis police officer. He served his country as the United States in the United States Army. And he too is a son, and a brother, and a father, and a friend. He too, his life, the life he's lived, he's not coming into this as a career criminal with 6 points, 5 points, 4 points. He's coming into this never having violated the law because he lived an honorable life and he attempted to live an honorable life. Derek Chauvin was not even scheduled to work on May 25th, 2020. He volunteered because there was short staffing at the time.
Well,
I know from
what did we learn from this, Derek?
Conversations that I've had with Derek, that his brain is littered with what ifs. What if I just had not agreed to go in that day? What if things had gone differently? What if I never responded to that call? What if, what if, what if? The truth of the matter is, and the end result is that we are here after a jury verdict, finding him guilty of these offenses. And the court's consideration should not only be focused on the aggravating factors, but the mitigating factors as well. The Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission was established for a reason. And yes, the court in circumstances like these has discretion to go beyond and aggravate a sentence beyond the presumptive sentences established by the sentencing guidelines. But the sentencing guidelines don't differentiate between second-degree murders. Someone robs a liquor store, a police officer is involved in an incident and a person dies in police custody, the law presumes,
So I was
the
being Peter
legislature
Cahill for a second.
presumes that the sentencing guidelines as established is a sufficient penalty for all of the second-degree murder categories or cases you would see. From 2019 back to 2010, a total of 90 people were sentenced for second-degree murder. Those sentences, those people, there were more than that, but people who had a 0 criminal history score, more than 90 people were sentenced. 67%, or 60 of those 90 people, received a guideline sentence of 150 months. So 2/3 of all people in this same position received a guideline sentence. 20% received an aggravated sentence, 18 of the 90, and 13% or 12 individuals were granted mitigated departures. So if the legislature and the intent of the sentencing guidelines is to eliminate sentencing disparity, the law should presume that the guideline sentence is what is appropriate in this case.
Snuggle Struggle says if the...
You may take into consideration at this point those aggravating factors, but you have to counterbalance them, which is the goal of the law, with the mitigating factors.
Snuggle Struggle says if the judge throws a book at Chauvin, it will cause Minnesota to become a lawless state in short order.
Family to have to endure.
Police will walk in the military, replacing them, a terrifying concept. Minnesota is verging on a failed state, thanks to Democrats.
Likewise, the prosecutors in this case have endured quite a bit, as has Mr. Chauvin's family. This is a case that has changed the world to some degree, and I hope it's positive. But it's my hope that the court follows the sentencing guidelines, applies the law in a reasoned manner, and imposes a just sentence.
Actually, Mr. Chauvin, would you join Mr. Nelson at the lectern?
We gather here today to join these two
Mr. Chauvin, this is your opportunity
in holy
if you
matrimony
wish to give any input to the court, and so I turn it over to you and your attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, due to some additional legal matters at hand, I'm not able to give a full formal statement at this time. But very briefly, though, I do want to give my condolences to the Floyd family. There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest, and I hope things will give you some peace of mind. Thank you.
And I'll note that I did read your comments in the pre-sentence investigation as well.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, we are going to take a 15-minute recess so that I can complete the sentencing order based on what I've heard today, and let's reconvene at 2:45. We're in recess.
All right, so we're gonna have a little delay time here. We'll be back at they'll be back at 2:45. We're gonna stay here. So, some things to talk about in this. I think there's a lot of confusion over what's going on in the courtroom. So I want to address that stuff so people understand like what this is about. Because I saw sentencing hearings are their own special animal. They're completely separate in a lot of ways from the legal process and from the legal arguments. So we're going to address that in just a minute. First, I've got a chat here from Bryce Johnson. Says, will you do a shot at 1,000 likes? Yes. If not, will you save it for the stream tonight? No, I'll do it right now because we have 1,000 likes. Almost bought a Whistle Pig yesterday. Instead got an Elijah Craig. Passing the savings on to you. Well, because of that, I'm glad you got an Elijah Craig. So I've got Minor Case rye whiskey here. Take a little nib of it. and we will talk about what's going on in the courtroom. This is the whiskey. Minor case. Good stuff. I'd give it a recommend. All right. Cheers to the chat, as always. So, sentencing hearing. A sentencing hearing is for the purpose of the judge to determine the sentence within the sentencing guidelines that are established by Minnesota. Now, the sentencing guideline is a grid that is set up, and the grid has the level of severity of the offense on the y-axis and the criminal history score on the x-axis. You match up the criminal history score. In this case, Chauvin has no appreciable criminal history. He does have some outstanding tax charges, but those are outstanding. They do not count at this point because he has not actually been convicted on any of them. So he has a 0 criminal history score. So you're just in the first box on the grid for the level of severity. Unintentional second-degree murder is the second box down on the grid, the second row, we'll say. And the presumptive sentence for no criminal history score and that second row is something around, it comes out to about 12 to 15 years. I can't remember the exact amount. Now, in the box, there's a range of months with an average in the middle of the range. And I believe the average is I think it's like 13 or 15 years. Again, I don't remember the exact numbers. I could pull it up, but it's not really relevant here. So what you're arguing at sentencing is where in the box you fall. That's one of the questions. The other question you're arguing is over the relevant mitigating and aggravating factors. Do the aggravating or mitigating factors warrant a dispositional departure from the guideline? If the judge goes outside of the guideline sentence, in their discretion, they have the ability to go up or down. If they go outside of it, they just have to have an articulable justification for doing so, for going outside of the legislative's branch's proposed sentencing recommendations. So in this case, we know there are 4 findings of aggravating factors. He laid them out in a sentencing memo opinion on that. I did a video covering the 4 factors. They are within the letter of the guidelines. I don't think they're within the spirit of the guidelines for most of them, but they are within the letter of the guidelines. I don't see any reason that any appeals court would overturn the aggravating factors that he found. Now, Nelson has argued mitigating factors under the Trog case. And in those mitigating factors, he will be trying to cancel out the thing. But it's not a one-to-one exchange. This is within the discretion of the judge. And he can choose to use whichever factors he wants. I think it's highly likely the judge will choose the 4 aggravating factors and avoid the mitigating factors. Now, both parties prior to this hearing, actually about 20 days ago, both parties had briefed the judge on their proposals for the sentencing guidelines. They've already written out their legal arguments. They've cited the case law. They've said why these aggravating factors and mitigating factors, as a matter of case law and then of public policy, need to be recognized and why the sentence should be whatever the judge decides it to be. So this hearing offers the opportunity for a couple things. It offers victim impact statements. It offers impact statements from the defendant and a representative, and it offers a little bit of oral argument clarifying or reinforcing any of the factors. The testimony offered today is not subject to the typical rules of evidence. Notice you didn't hear any objections. There was no restriction to particular facts that are in the record. You can bring in external facts. Sentencing in every single state goes outside of the rules of evidence. All of them. There is, you get to use facts that aren't in evidence. You get to use community impact. You get to use all of these things. This is 100% normal. And if you think that this is an injustice, what is happening to Derek Chauvin, I would urge you to consider very strongly that our justice system engages in this exact same injustice every single day. It is not limited to white man Derek Chauvin, who has killed black man George Floyd. This is actually, this sentencing hearing that is taking place is, I am not surprised or shocked by anything going on. There is nothing abnormal. This is 100% within the purview of a sentencing hearing in Minnesota. If you don't like it, talk to your congresspeople, get it changed. If you think it's unjust, it is in many ways unjust. You've got to advocate for that change. But this is not disproportionately affecting Chauvin. In fact, I was expecting much worse than what we got, and that's how it is. And yes, victims are allowed to make impact statements that ignore the rules of evidence, that bring in emotion, that ignore logic, all of that. Yeah. And the reason is because the judge likely has already decided what sentence they're going to give. Whether you agree with that or not, that's kind of the reasoning. And there's not a jury there. There's not some, group of people that's going to decide the sentence. The judge himself will be doing it. And let's be real, this judge has already been influenced as much as anybody can possibly influence him. So that being said, this is perfectly normal. Now, people are talking about how this might be used later or whatever. Not really. These arguments are being made for today. The only thing that Chauvin did not do is he did not offer a statement on his own behalf because he does not want that statement to implicate him in some way in the event of a mistrial where they go ahead and retry him. But you know what Chauvin likely wanted to say was something like, I never intended to kill him. It was an accident, etc., etc., etc. But those things could be construed later as admissions on the record, so he's going to refrain from saying them. But generally speaking, nothing out of the ordinary here at all. This is also not the hearing to argue that there was an abuse of discretion by the judge, that there should have been a mistrial, the venue should have been changed, all of those things. All of those things have been argued in a post-judgment brief. They may be dealt with at a different hearing if the judge decides to hear oral argument on the brief, but most of that stuff is preparation for the appeals, getting things on the record for the judge to make rulings on that you can then take to the appeals court, and the appeals are coming. Someone in the chat said earlier that the appeals court won't hear this. Appeals in Minnesota are basically automatic for serious crimes. And even if you cannot afford to pay your attorney for the appeal, there's a group of lawyers who actually handles appeals cases in serious felony criminal acts in Minnesota. You're going to get your appeal, and the appeals court has to hear it. Now, it may not go to the Minnesota Supreme Court, but the appeals court has to hear it. It is your right. In the United States, you have a right to appeal any decision, any final judgment against you. You have a right to do that. So that's how the U.S. goes. I know in the United Kingdom, we saw with the Depp case, that can be a permissive right. Here it is required. So, but again, this isn't the hearing to make those arguments, and it's not the proper time to bring up all of the stuff. Eric Nelson has briefed Peter Cahill on all the times he screwed up. Peter Cahill is going to review that brief and determine that he did not screw up. And then Eric Nelson will have to take that to the appeals court to determine if Peter Cahill screwed up. That's how that's going to go. So if you're looking for those types of arguments in this hearing, you're not going to find them. And there's a reason for it. It's not because Eric Nelson's a bad attorney or he's leaving something on the table. No, it's because this hearing has nothing to do with any of that. And if they started getting into those arguments, it wouldn't be very useful. So that's where all of this is. That is the point of this hearing. This hearing is the sentencing hearing. So I hope that clarifies a lot of things in regards to what's going on today. Angry Healer says, lesson learned, whenever asked to do overtime, say no. Nailed it. Get a second job instead. Mr. Nicktown says, sure, you've already addressed this before, but can you take a second to explain how you can be found guilty of several degrees of the same crime rather than only the highest? Yes, in Minnesota, I'm not speaking for other states, but in Minnesota, as long as the multiple degrees do not have the same elements, you can be convicted of different levels of criminal activity for the same act. So in this case, second-degree unintentional homicide that is the result of an underlying assault is the elements of what Chauvin was convicted of as far as second-degree murder. For his third-degree murder, the elements of third-degree murder are an unintentional homicide, but not as the result of an underlying felony act. Rather, as a result of a reckless disregard for the value of human life and a depraved mind. So, because there is no predicate underlying felony act to cause the death, you have a separate set of factors that are being considered. So therefore, you have third-degree murder, and for the second-degree manslaughter, you have, you've created a duty, and you have negligently breached that duty, resulting in death, but it does not require a depraved mind. So you have a separate act again. And the reason that they allow this, and you can agree or disagree with them allowing this, look, again, this does not only happen to white officer Derek Chauvin who knelt on black man's neck. That's a misconception, and a lot of people are right here seeing what they perceive as injustice. You have to understand this injustice happens to whites, blacks, Latinos, Asians in Minnesota all the time, and in several other states as well. If you think this is unjust to Chauvin, it's unjust to a lot of people. This is what defense attorneys talk about when they talk about criminal justice reform. The fact that you're seeing it now is great. If you don't like it, advocate against it. That being said, the reason for that is because let's say you convict Chauvin of just one of the criminal acts, but he's actually guilty under the elements of all three. And then on appeal, they determined that he wasn't guilty under the one criminal act. Well, shouldn't he have been guilty under the correct one? That would be the argument. And so that's kind of why they do things this way. You can disagree with that. I'm not sure I fully agree with that. I kind of think the prosecutor should bring their best case on the charge. But that's how it is, and that's why it's that. I'm just explaining it. I'm not advocating for it. It's not my cup of tea. That's just what the answer is on that one. So the judge should be back in about 2 minutes. And I will be reading all of the chats that stop it. If Chauvin was black and Floyd was white, there wouldn't be a case. Maybe. I'm not talking about this case, though. I'm talking about this stuff happens to everyone of every race in the prosecution system all the time. It's the system that we've built. And if you don't like it, advocate against the system. And I encourage people to advocate against the system. But you shouldn't look at this as this is only happening because of the race issue. Things are escalated and enhanced because of the race issue. Sure, we've seen that. We've seen that in statements from the prosecution, seen that in statements from the defense, hell, statements from the judge and the jury. We know that the race issues involved in this case escalated the handling of the case and how it was done. Absolutely. But the underlying system, regardless of race, does this stuff all the time. And if you don't like it, advocate against it. That's part of what I'm saying. But that's, like, you're not going to find me arguing that race in the trial is not a factor here. Of course it is. Of course it is. And again, I think that the outrage in the public zeitgeist has caused Derek Chauvin to not really have the opportunity for a fair trial in Minneapolis. That's why I think I should have moved it, or why I think they should have moved it. And you can check out my videos on it if you want to. You can see all this. I've talked about this in a couple different videos. I have a playlist of Derek Chauvin stuff. This will go in the playlist as well. But if you want to check that out, it's there for the viewing. What would you advocate against exactly? Advocate against concurrent charges for a similar act. Advocate against sentencing guidelines, or advocate against the current wording of aggravating factors in sentencing guidelines. Aggravate against victim impact statements. Advocate against the consideration of public policy in sentencing. All sorts of things. I'm not saying that these are things you need to take up, but they're things to consider. There was an attempt to move venue. It was just unsuccessful. And also, I will be reading all of the super chats that have come in. Very, very thankful, by the way, for everybody who sends in a super chat. If yours has not been read yet, it will be. It will be read before the stream is over. And if it has a question or a comment, I will attempt my best efforts to address them. Absolutely. Let's finish up that whiskey. What are you guys doing this weekend? I hope you have good plans. I've got some family stuff going on today. Got family stuff going on tomorrow. Gonna have a good time. Can't wait to get into the weekend. Oh, but yeah, one other thing I wanted to talk about, Chauvin's statement. Like I said, he likely, he does not want to compromise his appeal. He does not want to compromise a retrial if they are granted a mistrial by making any statements today. And that's perfectly fine. I think having the mom speak on his behalf was a really, really good move. I don't think they even intended to have Chauvin go up and make a statement at all, but the judge calls you up to speak. You're going to say something. And you could kind of see Chauvin didn't look rehearsed at all. He looked a little nervous. And I think they intended to have him just stay sitting and not come up. I don't think there's a statement Chauvin could make at this point in time that would have benefited him in the sentencing hearing. In some ways you want to show remorse or whatever. And those Cahill mentioned, I think this is intentional on Cahill's part, that he has read the statements in the pre-sentencing inventory, the PSI that was ordered, where they have some people interview the convicted and get sort of an idea of where they fall on that. I think he was indicating to him, I've read your statements. So I'm guessing he expressed some remorse for the death, although probably not remorse for the acts, because he's going to deny that those acts were something he did. But no reason to make them back here. Longreach Jones says, study, went back to school. With any luck, I'll pass the bar just before I turn 40. Yeah, get it, buddy. Get it, buddy. C. Goody, I think there will be a show tonight. I'm not sure of the topics, but yeah, there's a bunch to talk about. If nothing else, Preston Poulter has fired his lawyers. So that's a subject. There's a bunch of things I've wanted to cover this week, but I have not been able to. And so there's plenty to talk about. So yeah, there should be a show tonight at 11 p.m. Look, if you're here now and you're not a normal viewer, which you may not be, I do a live stream most weeknights at 11 p.m. Central Time. If you're up at night and you want a spicy sort of place to hang out and talk about subjects, come hang out with us. They're much less reserved than daytime streams. Daytime streams are a little bit different. So if you want a little rancorous comedy / news / fun / camaraderie podcast, come hang out. Come hang out. Let's see if we can address some of the... Peter Cahill is late returning to his own court. What a weirdo. Let's see. Where did we leave off here? Music and fiction. Oh, wait, no, Alex Ghost. I did not finish his chat. I disserviced him. Says, did you see the Floyd statue getting defaced? No. It reminded me of you. Weird. Also, thanks for everything you and all your guests have given me insight through adulthood. Good. I'm glad. Music and fiction says, here's $5. Hey, thank you. Consider this my bet that he'll get 25 years, but then after they are done, it'll get overturned due to jury tampering and intimidation. Okay, back to this. Let me unmute it.
First of all, I wanted to thank everybody for being here and for providing the input you did.
You're welcome, Judge. Happy to be here.
In the courtroom here, but also those who provided written statements, both from the Floyd family and the defendant's family. I've read all the impact statements that were submitted earlier and listened carefully at all the input here today. And it is truly appreciated that you took the time to stay with this case.
Stop using hard sounds into your mic, Cahill.
I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and carefully considered all the facts of the case and the law.
Here we go.
But my comments are actually going to be very brief, because most of it's going to be in writing. I have a 22-page memorandum that is going to be attached to the sentencing order.
He's already written his memorandum.
Am I doing it in writing? To emphasize the fact that determining the appropriate sentence in any case, and in this case, is a legal analysis. It's applying the rule of law to the facts of an individual and specific case.
30 years.
And that is why,
here it comes.
As opposed to trying to being profound here on the record, I prefer that you read the legal analysis that explains how I determined the sentence in this case. What the case is, or what the sentence is not based on, is emotion or sympathy.
Maybe.
But at the same time, I want to acknowledge the deep and tremendous pain that all the families are feeling, especially the Floyd family. You have our sympathies. And I acknowledge and hear the pain that you are feeling.
This might be a 25er.
I acknowledge the pain not only of those in this courtroom, but the Floyd family who are outside this courtroom.
This might be a 25er, guys.
And other members of the community.
He might be mitigating
it. It's been painful throughout Hennepin County, throughout the state of Minnesota, and even the country.
He's going hard on this.
We need to recognize the pain of the Floyd family. I'm not going to attempt to be profound or clever, because it's not the appropriate time.
You don't seem like a profound or clever dude. No offense, you seem nice, but...
I'm not basing my sentence also on public opinion.
Lie.
I'm not basing it on any attempt to send any messages.
That I don't believe that for a moment.
Judge, the job of a trial court judge is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases. And so,
here it comes.
Mr. Chauvin, as to count 1, based on the verdict of the jury finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2 paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentence for count 1, the court commits you to custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust,
22 and a half years,
and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis. Anything further from the state?
If this needs to be said, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
Defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be transported back to the DOC or whichever custody is currently holding him. Anything for the defense?
No, not. It's
All
not
right.
270
Thank you.
plus
You're
150. It's 270. 270. 22 and a half years. I'm shocked. I thought we would get 30 for sure. Yeah, by the way, if you're a business in Minneapolis, cover your entire store in asbestos. Immediately cover your store in asbestos. There, it's coming. Quick, invest in asbestos stocks today. Game stonks invest asbestos. Oh shit. Hey, some of you are cool. Don't go to the cities tonight. Woo! Oh boy. Oh. Whoa. Okay. How long do I think he'll stay in prison? I think Derek Chauvin's gonna die in prison. Buy your buildings life insurance. Your buildings have life insurance. Buy them. Buy it now. It's the time. So there you go. That's the big news of today. I'm shocked. I thought he would go 30 years, but a lot of people who knew Cahill said he would play it down the middle. And they were right. They were right. Why does he have to register as a predatory offender? I have no idea. Let's figure that out. Let's see. Okay. What the hell is a predatory offender? All right, here we go. Minnesota's predatory offender registry. We're going to pull up the, let's take a look at the statute here and see what this says. Moment. A person shall register under this section if the person was charged with or petitioned for a felony violation of or attempt to violate or aiding, abetting, or conspiracy to commit any of the following and convicted of or adjudicated delinquent for that offense or another offense arising out of the same set of circumstances. Murder under section 609, 185, paragraph A, clause 2. That's first degree, A2. Kidnapping, criminal sexual conduct, indecent exposure, surreptitious intrusion. Person was charged with, so that's number 1. Or we've got this one. Charged with a petition for a violation of or attempt to violate any aiding or abetting or conspire to commit any of the following and convicted or adjudicated delinquent for that offense or another offense arising out of the same set of circumstances. 609, let's see, this looks like criminal abuse, false imprisonment, solicitation, prostitution, soliciting a minor, Sentenced as a pattern sex offender. Charged with or petitioned for, including pursuant to a court-martial, violating a law of the United States, including Uniform Code of Military Justice. Okay. Or we've got a separate. A person shall also register if person was charged with or petitioned for an offense in another state that would be a violation of law described in paragraph A. Person enters this state to work, reside, or attend school. 10 years have not elapsed since the person was released from confinement. Not confined since the person was convicted of or adjudicated delinquent for an offense that triggers registration. Also register. Committed pursuant to a court commitment under Minnesota Statutes 212, 253B, 253D. Those are old statutes. Charged with petition for a felony violation, violate any of the offenses listed in paragraph A, clause 1, or of a similar law of another state, or the person was charged with A, clause 2 in the United States. I don't know. I don't understand the registration. I'll have to read up on it. I don't see... I don't see it here because 609, 185, this is A clause. This is first degree murder. What is criminal abuse? Maybe it's this criminal abuse thing because of the aggravating factors. I'm not sure. I'll have to read his opinion. It'll be laid out in the opinion. We'll check it out. We'll check it out. So, I'll have a follow-up video on the sentencing with the actual 22-page memorandum, and we'll give it a look. I'm not sure on what the reasoning is there. Linda Marie, I don't know because he wasn't convicted of that. So I gotta read his memo on it. That's what we'll have to get into. So the lesser counts are considered not adjudicated. So he's not sentencing them on the lesser accounts since the greater count is the one that I guess is big enough of a conviction. I guess he would only sentence them if the one count is overturned. And the reason for that is because Minnesota has concurrent sentencing anyway. So he would serve all of the time for all three counts at the same time. So he'd basically serve off the third degree manslaughter, serve off the second degree manslaughter, serve off the third degree murder, and then finish his sentence for second degree murder anyway. So he just doesn't want to go ahead and get into the factors, I guess, aggravating factors for those other ones and stuff like that. He's making his sentencing on just the first charge. Do you know when we'll have access to download the sentencing memorandum? No, I don't know. I guess he's got to file it. And then maybe as soon as today. Maybe as soon as today he may file it, and then it'll be uploaded. The Minnesota court's website has all of the case documents related to Chauvin and the three other officers. It's under. You have to go to media coverage, and then you have to go to major, like public interest court cases. Wait, Noah Hastings says 609-185A2 specifically lists murder in the second degree. Oh, let's take a look at that. No, that's a different thing. So that's murder in the first degree. A2 is causes the death of a human being while committing or attempting to commit criminal sexual conduct in the first or second degree. So no, that's a different thing there. To clarify. All right, so let me get through the rest of the chats, and then we'll wrap up the stream. Cryptos Chaos, thank you for the donation. Mulfiard says, if Chauvin hired Ronnie, he would have walked. Just saying. Ronnie is Chad lawyer of all time. Toab says, pee is stored in the testes. Yes, that's true. Biologically and medically correct. Ender says, why you did that? Snuggle Struggle says, does Floyd's brother want to ask the fentanyl why too? I mean, 3 to 4 times lethal dosage consumed by Floyd. Sure, prosecute, but Floyd had agency. Roscoe P. Coltrane says, have you seen the documentary The Donut King? It explains how the Cambodians took over the donut market. God, I love donuts. I'm going to be in Houston I'm going to get there July 7th, but July 8th will be the first day I can buy donuts. I'm going to buy so many donuts. I'm going to buy so many donuts. I'm going to bring them to Anime Matsuri. Ender says, Felonious Floyd. Lisa Compton says, he died of drug overdose. How can they charge Chauvin? The crazy thing is, even if he would have died from a drug overdose and Chauvin's actions accelerated that death even by a minute, technically they can charge. I think people don't really understand that, but that is how murder works out in the United States. Skull Leader, they do not have good donuts in Minnesota. No, they don't exist. Not So Handsome Jack says, this disgusts me. If he was still alive, he'd be high on fentanyl and he'd probably abuse his daughter. Pregnant woman he held at gunpoint would say so. I don't know if there's actually any confirmation that the woman was pregnant. That one's been a weird one for me. But that being said, who knows? Joe B says, a lot of this is theater. I've dealt with people like this. Their family is almost like stuff to them. They only care as long as they can use it as a victim card. I don't know his family. I don't know anything about it. Lisa Compton says, when Trump comes back, justice will return to the U.S. God bless Trump and the USA. As far as the Floyd family, I think it didn't help their case that the one guy went from being a trucker to an internationally paid speaker. That kind of doesn't leave a good taste in people's mouth about like whether or not he's motivated one way or another. Snuggle Struggle says, will the Floyd family use that $27 million to come? 26.5, half of it was donated or what, or half a million was donated to combat fentanyl being funneled into the country. If Chauvin let him go, all that fentanyl consumed. Frederick Little says, hey, Nick, hope you're having a good day. I'm usually having a good day. Mars Ulter says, Derek Chauvin for Equal Employment Opportunity Commissioner. Come on now. Today on the internet, Nelson Bakery's donuts are good compared to other Minnesota donuts. Listen, I am a Nelson Brothers expert. I go there every time I drive past it. I went to law school driving past it every day. I got sandwiches and donuts literally constantly. Trust me, as a God-loving Texan, I cannot endorse the shamocracy of Minnesota donuts. Nelson Brothers donuts are good. They are not good enough. Period. Ben Graziano says, what about Muhammad Noor? He's got reductions of sentence, but Chauvin needs max. I'm confused. Paul Brogdon Photography, please don't spam. Only rule on the channel. Please don't spam. What would I have sentenced him with? I don't know. Maybe guidelines. Chris Rapazzo says, election campaign reform right here. John O'Brien says he is literally confirming cumulative on appeal. Onakomi says, I care about you. Stop resisting. Pow, pow, pow. Mars Ultor says, in announcer voice, in 2021, an elite Minnesota cop was convicted of a crime he did commit. Now, if you need help and if you can find him, you can hire the Need Team. Dun, 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 dun. There you go. Axel Oz says, I believe it was excessive force from the moment they pulled him out of the cop car because it should have been over when he was put in the car. You know, there's a lot of merit to that. A lot of merit to that. I think the cops made a lot of mistakes in this thing. They should have closed the door behind him and closed the door in front of him. That's it. That's what should have happened. Unfortunately, it didn't, and then we have to address things as they go. Snuggle Struggle says, something tells me this is just liberal prawn. While I don't kink shame, this is gross. Minnesota is becoming a failed state quickly under Democrats on purpose. Dude, we've been under Democrats longer than any other state in the union. Longer than California. Rock and Roll Tyrannosaurus says, as a government employee, I can tell you that the training I received was garbage. Most of what I learned was from my coworkers. Question mark says, notice Terrence Floyd neglected to mention all the black supremacists who've been attacking the country for a year, only getting a slap on the wrist. Johnny F. Face says, these statements matter, or has the judge decided? Well, we found out the judge had already decided. And I think that's pretty common for sentencing hearings, but he could always change it a little bit. He could always update his opinion if he wanted to, but I think he had already decided. Johnny F. Face says, love tyranny so much he asked for extra duty. Can I terrorize the public on my day off too, please? And he finally says, bet she held him down and stuck with him anyway. Polyfrog says, I saw another lawyer saying there was no chance of a fair trial, so the trial should never have happened. Sham of justice. Sorry, Nick, you're wrong. There is no case where there is no chance of a fair trial precluding a trial from happening. It merely delays it or moves the venue. You could say I'm wrong all you want. I said he didn't get a fair trial, though. So I'm not sure where I'm wrong on that one. G-Man says, not only does the law require officers to provide care for prisoners, but apparently you must also develop a deep emotional bond with them. True. Johnny F. Face says, police mostly help people lose their freedom and money. Gummy, Krispy Kreme does suck. You're correct. How does it feel to live in a country in which your leader casually threatens to nuke you? Feels great. Feels great. The best thing is I know that Joe Biden can't even spell nuclear, so I'm not worried about it. Krusty says, good point. I'm never doing overtime again. Billy Boy Blue says, my biggest take from this, never pick up OT. Management will never appreciate it. Don Face says, can they claim a mistrial? Yes, they have claimed a mistrial. That issue will probably be dealt with on appeal. And would the jury not being sequestered play a role? Possibly, yeah. If they can show some potential impact of the statements of Joe Biden and Maxine Waters, maybe. Gerbrick says, my wife forced me to buy a replica lightsaber at Disneyland. Got the original Luke hilt. Here's some money so I can brag. Thanks for everything, Nick. Have fun with that. Johnny Stovall says, none of your regular viewers are normal. Gummy says, 12-story building collapsed in Miami on the beach yesterday. They said it's been sinking into the sand since the 90s. 159 people missing, 4 dead so far. Very sad. It is very sad. I watched it. That was horrifying to watch, man. Phoenix Orem says, the Weebs want you to come in for Payday 2 on Twitch. What? What are you playing? I don't have Payday 2. Mechanical Fluff says, please explain predatory offender in this context. I don't know. We went through the statute and it's not in there. Not sure why he's registering as a predatory offender. Don't understand. I have to look more into it than just on the fly. Taker610 says, Nor got 12 for shooting a woman. What a joke. Rhinosaurus Rex says, day business has life insurance. Stephen F says, well, now he's got to survive the crapshoot of prison with every inmate aware of when he'll be released. Last year will be anxiety ridden for him. P-Dog Knight says, well, I'll be staying in the suburbs tonight. Yeah, I strongly recommend that. Johnny Stovall says, big brains invest in mesothelioma treatments. Bandpuff says, there's a literal celebration going on in my work's break room. Jokes on them. We're Target, so we're about to get looted, Lamau. This is absurd. Cool Frog says, Minnesota has a 2/3 sit time for good time rule. He could be out in 15 years. Hashtag Chauvin did not kill himself. Charlie says, do you know when we'll have access to download a sentencing memorandum? Sounds like it's already up. Bad Dragonite says, Big Bubba gonna be Chauvin D's nuts in a cell. Dragon's Treasure says, bring me some donuts, please. Look, you're gonna be at Matsuri. I'll bring some. Mr. Bentham says, are they as good as Dunkin' Donuts? Just kidding. I'm glad you added the just kidding because you were about to get banned. Alex Ghost says, you didn't finish my first super chat, Boomer. I did. I went back and finished it. Mars Altor says, if the city government of Minneapolis is smart, there will be a mysterious breakdown in the water supply tonight. It'll save them billions in the long run. Linda Marie says, will Pump and Munch, a Korean donut store, survive tonight? Oh, and the Korean donut store is pretty far away. I don't think they're in trouble. It's Vietnamese, by the way. How dare you? The Pump and Munch, I don't hold high hopes for the Pump and Munch. I don't think they're going to make it. There you go, guys. But yes, Alex Ghost, I read your chat about me and all the guests providing you insight. And I'm happy that you're getting stuff from it. All right, guys, I'm going to go hang out with my family, have some food for a Friday evening grill. We're going to see you guys hopefully tonight at 11 p.m. Thank you for coming on in the middle of the day, making this a great show. Always appreciated. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you very soon. Phoenix Orem says, "What's your Steam? It's cheap." In my Discord, there's somewhere you can find a link to the Steam group for my Discord, and you can get me in there. And then P Dog Knight says, "Love me some Nelson Brothers. I'll look you up next time I'm out there." Yeah, do so, man. Do so. It's not the money. It's Phoenix. It's the I don't have a lot of time to play games right now, or ever, unfortunately. All right, guys. Thanks a bunch. Nope. Wolfgang Deo says nukes are finite. God is infinite. Military owns the nukes. The president merely gives authorization to launch. Otherwise, the nukes sit there. And I just realized I did not look at Streamlabs. To my discredit, let me make sure. Yep, there's some Streamlabs donations in here. I gotta check them out. I can't believe I missed these. Butt Worlds Man says, Jersh says Vic Lasagna is a closet homo. See DM video for more info. If it sounds like a gay, looks like a gay, dresses like a gay, and cries like a gay. ... Chris Nemo says his kid has nothing to do with the trial. What a disgusting joke. Yeah, the kid was not brought into the trial. These are victim impacts, and they don't have to have anything to do with the trial. Unanswered question says, "Hey Nick, I was reading an article about how some states don't have marriage age limit laws, and some lawmakers said those aren't really necessary because they have other laws that protect children. Is that how it works, or am I missing something?" Doesn't sound like how it works, because marriage typically is the exemption from those laws that protect children. Yash Ken says, "Hey Nick, on the Wednesday before Matsuri, can you consider a Fat Boy stream talking about the good food in Houston?" Maybe. The Wednesday before Matsuri, I'm going to be just getting into Houston. So I don't know how that's going to work. So, all right, guys. We will talk to you at a later date. Well, later tonight, hopefully. Thanks for coming out again. Until next time, peace. Oh, I gotta turn on the audio for the outro. I screwed it up the other night. Here we go. Peace. Camelot, I see you. What's up, buddy?
Oh, he drinks a fair bit, but you realize that it just helps get his noggin jogging along. With his glass by his side and his kids asleep tight, we'll hear some law-splaining tonight. With his microphone muted, we'll laugh at this boomer until he explains it's all part of the plan. Watch his face become redder as he becomes madder, raging at idiots from Twitterland. From the white shores of Maine to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we have now. Oh, his lady is fair, and she handles herself with the grace of one who has borne many children. As the wife of a lawman, she makes sure that he has the time and the place to provide for them there. So pour out an Ardbeg, a Balmore, a Lafroig. The spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the tea post on Twitter as we hear law-splaining tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we are now. folks from Dundee to Drexel, they bring their perspective and spice to the mix. But the reason we're here and the one that we cheer is the one who is showcasing us his career. Spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the tea. Post on Twitter as we hear Lost Blaming tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the thought better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we have now.